If you know me well, it's no surprise that I love indie games, but I wasn't always like this. Actually, pretty much before the Switch, I stuck mostly to Nintendo first-party IPs, and I didn't really know a lot about the indie industry. I think that is in part because, one, I didn't care, but also just because Nintendo didn't seem to care either, especially in the era of the Wii U. And since Nintendo has always been my primary console, and most of the time my only console, I just wasn't really playing indies. But boy did that change with the Switch. Not only do I play tons of indies, I actually prefer them a lot of the time compared to some of Nintendo's IPs. So what gives? What happened? How could I have had such a change in heart so quickly? I'm positive I'm not the only one who feels this way. Pretty much since the Switch first came out, everyone has been using the term perfect for Switch, especially when referring to a lot of the indie games. Why are indie games doing so well on the Switch, and how did it turn into the go-to console for them? Well, number one, Nintendo's support of indie devs. Nintendo is actively engaging in these types of developers and marketing the games like their own first-party IPs and providing more support than ever before. Not only are they marketing some of the bigger indies so well with including them in their own Nindies directs and even some in their regular directs, but they're even securing AAA exclusive titles like Octopath Traveler, something that they haven't really done since the SNES era. Compared to the Wii U, Nintendo opened up the Switch platform by allowing use of Unity and Unreal Engine, two of the most common game designing softwares used, and has been providing indie-friendly dev tools to support these studios. Nintendo has been putting a focus on increasing the number of people who are developing for Switch by making development easier and making the publishing process much simpler. Actually, Takahashi, the director and managing executive officer at Nintendo, had this to say: "We do not think of indie games as competition for the large-scale games we develop ourselves. Rather, I think these indie games are what really invigorate Nintendo Switch overall." So this just supports a lot of what Nintendo is doing. They're actively engaging with indie developers, and they're even going to different video game shows in different regions to speak to them. They've also said that they are working toward 1,500 software titles total and trying to put out 20 to 30 indies a week. Now at the time of recording, the Nintendo eShop on Switch has 1,737 software titles already, so they've already achieved this goal. Nintendo even has a centralized portal where creators can communicate and ask questions directly with people at Nintendo, and they're also offering even greater marketing support than ever. This is just such a big change from back in the Wii U days, where Nintendo used to be so hard to get a hold of, and even when you did, that platform wasn't exactly easy to use or develop for. So all in all, it's good to see that Nintendo is giving their full support to indie developers, and that's obviously showing in the amount of indie games that we've gotten so far. So what do indie developers have to say about this? Well, for one, they say Switch is great for quick bursts of play or long sessions on the TV, so that's pretty obvious. But I think what they mean by this is that, they're used to developing on, say, a mobile device where, someone has their phone and they're just going to pop into a game very quickly, and so they don't really have the opportunity to create a game that's more immersive and has a lot more things in it because people aren't playing or gaming on their phones for very long. I mean, I can't imagine taking out my phone and playing a game on it for, an hour or 2 hours. So that's what's great about Switch, is that they can make a game that's good for mobile play, but also a game that can work well for those longer sessions that you're going to be sitting at home in front of your TV. Also, for indie developers, it's just good business sense to be invested in Switch. The players are engaged in buying software. The eShop encourages, perusing and choosing and considering your options more closely, as only a few games show on the screen at once. A small amount of titles compared to other platforms, especially Steam. Also, good games often show up in multiple locations. If it's a good game, it's likely going to be showing up in the bestsellers lists and even maybe in the features list, etc. It's just multiple places where you can find good games. Simon Jocelyn, who developed The Gardens Between, he had this to say: "The take it with me everywhere and good store design points also work together nicely. Since it's the one dedicated gaming platform I can take with me everywhere, I'm much more comfortable buying games I know I'll play eventually, and so I stock up on a lot of games. and this I definitely can attest to. A lot of times when they have those big indie sales on the eShop, I tend to buy a bunch of games all at once, knowing that I'm not going to be able to play them all, at the same time. But I'll buy, 3, 4, 5 games at once because they're on sale, and I know I'm going to play them later, and I'm not really too worried about it. On the flip side of that though, they're also saying that the eShop has a healthy ecosystem and price by not discounting games as heavily or as often. Indie games feel like a great bargain at $20, especially when us as console owners are used to paying $60+ for games. Also for these indie devs, they know that people are rebuying games to play on the go because it's much more convenient than a laptop. So even if we already own the game on laptop or another console, we're probably going to buy it again just for the fact that it's on Switch and it's handheld and we can take it wherever we want. As far as ease of development goes for the Nintendo Switch, indie devs are used to performance and memory constraints because a lot of their games are on mobile devices. So actually for them, the Switch isn't a downgrade like it would be for some of these other, big AAA studios who make games for Microsoft and PlayStation and then they have to downgrade the game to get it on Switch. No, for indie devs, this is actually a boost in performance for them. They have more power and they have full controllers on the Switch, so they don't need, on-screen clutter for controls. And also there's just better co-op experiences on Switch because on a PC you can't really play local co-op, where on Switch you always have 2 controllers with you at all times, so it's super easy to just take the other controller off the console and play with someone else. Also with mobile, it's cluttered with so many free-to-play games that it makes it hard for these indie devs to put their games on there because there's just so many free games that we can play. Some devs also pointed out that other platforms are not as indie friendly and they have higher development costs and they have cluttered online shops. So, again, like we've talked about mobile, we've talked about Steam being cluttered with way too many games now. Even, Xbox and PlayStation, there's just too many games. And, Switch is starting to feel that, but it's still new enough that the games are not getting lost in the shuffle. Also, one of the developers from the game Armello on Switch notes that the Switch audience was more open to that kind of game than users of other platforms. So that's really important, I think, is that for Switch, we are eating up these indie games. We just have more of a diverse crowd of gamers, I think. And lastly, just like myself, indie devs have said they just have a great love for Nintendo. Their games were a huge inspiration and they love Switch. The games, the media approach, the fan love, it's versatile, it's fun, it's intoxicating. Nintendo is just on fire right now, just all the hype surrounding it, and it just makes you want to be involved in the Switch. The sales numbers don't lie. Digital sales eclipsed physical games in the US for the first time in Nintendo history, where indie games make up a significant chunk of that. Now, this is important because a lot of these indie games are not getting physical releases. So let's look at a few of these figures. So we have Enter the Gungeon selling 75,000 copies in 2 weeks. Super Meat Boy had its first day sales close to its debut on Xbox 360. Even the developer for Putty Pals mentions that local co-op couldn't even exist on PC, and it sold more on Switch day 1 than the previous 8 months on PC, which is insane. There is just so many mentions of these games selling better on Switch. So just to rattle off a few more, we have SteamWorld Dig 2 sold 10 times more on Switch than Steam. Blossom Tales, which is a great game that I highly recommend, it sold 20 times more on Switch than Steam. Oceanhorn sold more on Switch than PC, PS4, and Xbox One combined. Stardew Valley has sold 1 million copies. Overcooked has sold 500,000 copies. Hollow Knight sold 250,000 in 2 weeks. Shovel Knight 370,000, which is the fastest sales that they've had on any console. Wonder Boy also selling more on Switch than PC, PS4, Xbox One combined. Celeste selling the most on Switch. Has Been Heroes selling the most on Switch. Thimbleweed Park selling the most on Switch. The list just goes on and on and on. These sales figures are just insane. Looking at my personal Switch library, I have 16 games on Switch, which is way more than I ever had on my Wii U, and more than half of them are indies. I actually have 60 plus games on my wish list, and almost all of those are indies. I'm just waiting for the eShop gift cards to go on sale again before I start buying a bunch of those games. When they do go on sale, they sell out super fast because they sell $50 eShop cards for $42.50 on eBay. So I will post a link to that on my Twitter as soon as they are available because they sell out super fast. So make sure to follow me on Twitter so you can get notified as soon as those go on sale. But all this talk of sales is great, but what does this mean for the future? I think it's clear that the eShop will soon suffer from the same problem that Steam and even Google Play Store and the Apple Store have, which is too many games, so many of those start to get buried. These platforms still haven't really figured out a way to fix this, although Steam is actively trying, especially with its abundance of sales. But rest assured, Nintendo is also working to redesign the eShop and putting even more initiatives in place for marketing to help the eShop from being oversaturated. It's clear that indies are important to Nintendo and they are invested in it for the long term. And so, in conclusion, when I personally say perfect for Switch, what I mean is that I just love my Switch. Any game that can run on Switch is perfect for Switch because there's just something so appealing about being able to take a game and play it wherever, whenever I want. But what do you guys think? Are you into the indie scene on Switch, or are you getting sick of the flood of games on the eShop? What indie games are your favorite, or which ones are you most excited for in the coming year? I really want to know because I'm sure there's some great indie gems that I've personally missed. So let me know what are your favorites in the comments section below.